Hello, welcome to this video on graphing the sine function. In this video, we're going to introduce the ideas of graphing trigonometric functions, and we're going to talk about some key vocabulary words, I guess, features, you could say, of trigonometric functions. And this video will specifically focus on the sine function. So I want to start out talking about the sine function with your prior knowledge of the sine function in the unit circle. Remember that in the unit circle, the sine function or sine of theta, this is equal to the y value of the coordinate for that given angle. So if we look at the value of sine of 0, so at angle 0, the y value is 0. So the output for angle 0 is 0. For sine of pi over 2, we go to pi over 2 and we identify the y value, which is 1. For pi, it's 0. For 3 pi over 2, the y value is negative 1. And at 2 pi, we again have 0. So you should notice that these values go from 0 to 1 to 0 to negative 1 to 0. And if we were to plot these on a x and y axis, so 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi 0, so on and so forth, we get this kind of graph. And this is the parent function of sine of theta. Now, if we were to keep going past 2 pi, we would get the same outputs. And what happens is the function starts to repeat itself. Okay, and we get this kind of repeating pattern. If you're familiar with physics or you've seen these kind of graphs before, these are what we call waves. And you can see that again it starts to repeat itself here at 2 pi. So I want to talk about some of the things that we should notice when we look at this. Well, we already talked about the graph starts to repeat itself, okay? And it repeats itself every 2 pi. So I'm going to write that. So repeats every 2 pi. This is what we call period. The period of this graph is 2 pi. It repeats itself. If I was asking you guys, like, what is your period for like your daily habit, right? You wake up, you take a shower, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, come to school, you go home, then you repeat itself, right? So like one day would be like your period if we were talking about relating to the sine function. Also notice too that the maximum of the sine function is 1. Maximum is 1. And that the minimum is negative 1. We'll talk about this idea in another video, but this is what we call the amplitude. Amplitude. It's essentially the height of a trigonometric function from its midline value. And again, we'll talk about midline later on, but its height is 1. Maybe the last thing that you notice too here is that the intercepts occur every pi. So intercepts every pi unit. So it crosses over the x-axis at every pi unit. Okay, so this is the parent function sine of x. Okay, and so just a general checking for understanding question. How many periods are shown on the graph? Well, how many times does the graph repeat itself? So I start here at 0, I go up, I come down, I hit my minimum, and then I repeat myself again. It starts to do it again. And you can see with the two colors that clearly here there are 2 periods. shown. Okay, so again, in this graph, we just talked about the basic ideas and an intro into the sine function. And the next video that I do will talk about how do we actually graph the sine function.